Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias. It is my pleasure and privilege to have you here in the Milpitas College Extension. So I really don't need to make an introduction. He's going to tell you about his life, about his success, and he's going to share with us the why, the how, the where, and most importantly, what is he doing today. So without any additional time, I want to introduce Guillermo Diaz to this place.
I brought my shades, Alex, because I know how you'd like to touch the heartstrings, and I may have to throw them on for a couple of questions here.
Let's talk about your childhood, and let's talk about your family and so forth.
Born and raised in Pueblo, and a quote from President Eisenhower, he said, "There's something in the water in Pueblo." Because all of the heroes come from Pueblo, So it's really cool to actually have that sort of that mantra. So, one brother, two sisters, my grandparents, my grandmother, who ended up living with us. Actually, my grandmother was more like my mom, and my mom was more like my sister. That's sort of how it worked. So my grandmother was the one that actually raised us in the house, because my mom was always at work, doing things to make sure that we were secure as a family, right?
So tell us who is this lady here and what she means to you?
Yeah, so that is that lady there sitting down is my hero.
She This was back in maybe the
that
early
was
60s?
Had to be probably early to mid 60s, and I don't know exactly what year that was, but what you see there is she right out of high school, they didn't obviously have a lot of money to go to college. She had really great grades and all that, so she got hired by, and where I'm from, it's Pueblo, Colorado. So there was a big armed forces facility there, and it was called the Pueblo Army Depot. And they had a job at that point for this communications specialist, and she was able to go through all the interviews, and as a woman, as you can see her, she's working on this telecommunication system. And if you look at some of the words here, like and it's interesting, on the way down I said, I think Alex is going to show a picture of you. And she said, oh yeah, that was a system that we used to run telecommunications on. And we used to do this cryptography. And I'm like, in that day, who talked about cryptography or crypto or anything of that sort, right? So, she would leave the house in the middle of the night because she got called, hey, we have a top secret message coming in. So she'd have to leave the house, and sometimes with snow coming down, we grew up in Colorado, and but why I say she's my hero is breaking at that point. A Hispanic woman breaking boundaries, being in at least a semi-technical job, and not having a college degree, and being able to really break through a lot of the boundaries, and she you can see from the picture there is it's pretty amazing what at that point in time what a Hispanic woman was able to accomplish, right?
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about your childhood and activities that you were involved with. I know you studied martial arts, right? How do you think that may have impacted your approach to life and tackling things and so forth?
Well, I think, so I was about 9 years old when I started martial arts, and I was always intrigued by this guy called Bruce Lee, right? I used to go to every movie, and I always, would would go by the YMCA, and in front of the YMCA, they had sort of like the karate classes, and I used to sit there and watch it. And one day, the instructor says, "Hey, you want to join it?" And I'm like, "Sure, yeah, that would be cool." So we did one class, and I was like, "This is really cool. This is my thing." But the instructor always told me something. He said, "You have something that I don't know, you won't realize it now, but you'll realize it at some point." Because I used to teach at about 11 and 12 years old. I used to teach classes that were 40, 50 people, and they were adults. Many of the classes were adults. And I was a 12-year-old teaching those classes, and people were, I didn't think about it at the time, but people would follow the lead. And he says, you're a leader. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. He's like, you're able to connect with people, and you're able to influence them to do a certain thing and move in a certain direction. And those instructors, there were two of them. One of them was named Danny Sistenroy, and the other one was C.R. Valdez. And they always had this creo en ti mindset. They always believed in me, even though I didn't really understand what all that meant.
Well, let's talk a little bit about those years again. And was there anything pivotal, like an experience or an event that you had that maybe was pivotal in like going in a certain direction? Anything that you recall that might have been impactful to you?
We didn't have the means to go to university. I mean, we could have forced it, but I didn't want to. I said, what I want to do is, I'm going to get a degree by hook or by crook. That's one thing I know, and the one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my heart in Pueblo, but I have to get out of Pueblo. And this was a tough thing, because in Pueblo is if you don't leave, you don't leave. But I decided I was going to go to the military and go this route of getting a GI Bill, and I would get my degree that way. I wanted to be actually an Air Force. I wanted to be in the Air Force, and I wanted to be this jet fighter pilot, because I loved this movie Top Gun, and I was gonna be that dude, right? And so I had that in my mind, and I was talking to the Navy also at the time, and they said, well, they had this job called Electronic Specialist Telecommunications. And so I told my mom, I'm going to go to the Air Force. And she says, well, what did they tell you? What's the job? And I said, well, jet engine mechanic. And she's like, what did the Navy say? Oh, there's this job called Electronics Specialist, Telecommunications, Networking. She said, that's what you're going to do. And I said, no, I'm going to go to the Air Force. No, you're going to the Navy. And so this was this back and forth, and when she threw that over my dead body kind of thing, it was like, how do you argue with that, right?
Yeah.
And guess what company I work for today?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so she, in a way, she already had that foresight, right? It sounds like.
Yeah, and there's nothing. It was great, and then in those times, the mechanic is great. Especially working on jet engines. There's nothing wrong with that. But she wanted me to be more technical and more, working with my brain and my hands versus just hardcore, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it was a great call by her, right? Let's talk about a little bit more about your journey, but this time let's talk about success, right? And you've had a tremendous amount of success. It happens in collaboration, and it also happens because there's people along the way that, the instructors from the Taekwondo dojo that you were at, they said, hey, we believe in you, go ahead and lead this. Let's talk about it professionally. has there been people along the way that have like championed you and been advocates? And
Yeah, and I think that's part of the journey is like, you know, when you're humble and when you feel like, you know what, you show that, hey, I'm willing to take that risk, or I'm willing to step in, coach, and people see that, and you actually get results out of that. Because let's not confuse effort and results, right? One thing is to get in the game, the other is to make the basket. But you have to be able to show the results. And then, you know, just throughout the years, you know, I've learned about relationships over issues. I've learned about, you know, people, and this is probably the most I've gotten out of the mentors and the sponsors is it's about the people. And if you can figure out how to bring people along that journey, then you could do it. You could accomplish anything. But probably the biggest sponsor in my career has been, and she's now retiring from Cisco, has been Rebecca Jacoby. And Rebecca was the CIO at Cisco prior to me, and we kind of, you know, I remember there were times where, you know, there was one time, and this was a pivotal point in my career. We were having so many issues, and we were in this like war room. This is this threshold for pain, and it was painful. And she looked at me, and it was like, she's a tough. I mean, if you ever meet Rebecca Jacob, yeah, Elba's laughing here. If you ever meet Rebecca, she's tough, Eddie, you know, right? But she looked at me with like these puppy dog eyes, and I said, I got it. Just you need to. You know, she had to go to an event that she had to fly somewhere. I said, I got it. Don't worry, I got it. And I think that point, this was early 2000s, I think she said to herself, okay, I trust this guy. Hopefully he fixes it, because when I get back, hopefully it's fixed, because I need to go do this event. And we fixed it. And it was about the results. You gotta bring people along the journey.